I'm not sure what drove me to that old bookstore on the corner of Hawthorne and Elm. I'd walked past it 100 times, its dusty windows and faded sign barely registering in my mind. But on that cold October afternoon, something compelled me to step inside. The bell above the door jingled as I entered, and the musty scent of aged paper filled the air. Shelves teetered under the weight of countless forgotten volumes, their spines cracked and faded. I wandered aimlessly until I found myself in a dimly lit corner, drawn to a shelf marked Antiquities. That's when I saw it, a leather-bound manuscript, its cover embossed with strange symbols that seemed to writhe under the flickering fluorescent lights. It wasn't labeled with a title, just an intricate design that felt both ancient and unsettling. I reached out, feeling a strange pull towards it, and as soon as my fingers brushed the cover, a shiver ran down my spine. I bought the manuscript without a second thought, ignoring the cashier's raised eyebrow. Back in my apartment, I carefully opened it, expecting to find the usual archaic prose and faded ink. Instead, the first page greeted me with words written in a neat, familiar script. It was my handwriting. I blinked, convinced I was imagining things, but the words remained. They described events from my own life with an uncanny accuracy. My childhood home, my awkward teenage years, my failed relationships. Every detail was there, down to the scar on my knee from when I fell off my bike at age 8. My pulse quickened as I turned the pages. The manuscript didn't just recount my past, it seemed to predict my future. I read about a phone call I received that very afternoon from my sister, telling me about her new job. The manuscript described the conversation word for word. "This has to be a prank," I muttered, slamming the book shut. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The eerie accuracy, the feel of the book, it all felt too real, too sinister. Over the next few days, I couldn't stay away from the manuscript. I read it obsessively, my fascination mingled with mounting dread. It predicted small things at first, a coffee spill, a chance meeting with an old friend. Then the predictions grew darker. I read about a car accident that would kill a coworker, and 2 days later, it happened exactly as described. My fear grew as I realized the manuscript was inescapable, its words a prophecy of doom. One night, I read ahead, driven by a morbid curiosity. The manuscript described me finding something horrifying in my old childhood home, the place I hadn't visited in years. It hinted at a dark secret buried in the past, something that filled me with a sense of profound dread. I couldn't resist. I had to know. That weekend, I drove to my old home, now abandoned and falling into disrepair. The front door creaked open, and a rush of stale air greeted me. I walked through the empty rooms, each step echoing with memories. As I entered my old bedroom, a sense of unease washed over me. The room was exactly as I'd left it, except for one thing. My clothes were hung up in the closet, perfectly mirrored, as if someone had taken the time to recreate every detail. I reached out to touch a familiar sweater, and a chill ran through me. It wasn't just a replication. These were my actual clothes, aged but unmistakable. Heart pounding, I continued reading the manuscript. It led me to the basement, to a hidden alcove behind the furnace. I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to stop, but I pushed forward, compelled by an unseen force. There, in the alcove, I found another manuscript. It looked identical to the one I had, but as I opened it, my blood ran cold. This one detailed the life of another person, someone who had lived in this house long before my family. Their life mirrored mine in terrifying ways. Same fears, same struggles, same dark fate. I turned the final page and saw a date, today's date. The manuscript described me standing in the basement, reading these very words. My breath caught as I read the last line. And then he heard a noise behind him. A creak echoed through the basement. I spun around, heart in my throat. There was nothing there, just shadows and silence. But I knew I wasn't alone. The air felt charged, heavy with a presence I couldn't see but could feel deep in my bones. Desperation clawed at me. I grabbed both manuscripts and fled the house, not stopping until I was back in my apartment. I threw the books into the fireplace and watched as the flames consumed them. The leather crackled and the pages blackened, but a sense of dread lingered. I thought destroying the manuscripts would end it, but the nightmares began that night. I dreamt of a shadowy figure, a man with no face, whispering to me in a voice that chilled my very soul. It told me that the manuscripts were just the beginning, that they were part of something much larger and more terrifying. The next morning, I found a new manuscript on my desk, its cover fresh and unburned. My hands trembled as I opened it, knowing what I would find. It was my story, continuing where the last had left off, each word etched in my handwriting, each prediction a shadow over my future. And at the end, a chilling revelation. The faceless man wasn't just a figment of my imagination. He was real, and he was coming for me. The manuscript was a trap, a curse that bound me to an inescapable fate. And as the days turned into nights, I realized that the only way to end it was to confront the faceless man, to uncover the truth behind the dark force that had ensnared me. I prepared for the final confrontation, steeling myself against the unknown horrors that awaited me. I returned to the house, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. In the basement, I found the faceless man waiting, his presence a silhouette against the flickering candlelight. He spoke in a voice that chilled me to the bone. "You cannot escape your story," he said, "but you can choose how it ends." With a final, desperate effort, I shattered the manuscript, its pages dissolving into ash. The faceless man's form wavered, his power fading as the cursed words burned away. But as he disappeared, he whispered a final warning. "The story never ends. It merely begins anew." And so, as I emerged from the ruins of my past, I knew that my battle was far from over. The manuscript's curse had been broken, but its echoes would linger, a reminder that some stories are never truly finished. As I walked away from the house, the night air cold against my skin, I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, another manuscript was being written, another soul ensnared by its dark allure. And in the shadows, the faceless man watched, waiting for his next victim.